What's up, Boiler Nation? It is JTBoiler here, and this week I'm going to be previewing the matchup between Purdue and Notre Dame as Purdue hits the road for the first time this season to face Notre Dame in South Bend, and both teams are looking to bounce back off of a loss. There'll be lots of interesting things to check out. We're going to go over a general game overview, key points for both sides in this matchup, and then ultimately some keys to victory for Purdue in my score prediction. Let's get into it. This game will be taking place on Saturday at 3:30 in South Bend. Should be a pretty good one. Purdue is coming in at 2-1 off of their loss 33-17 against USC to open up Big Ten play, whereas Notre Dame is coming in at 0-2 after their losses to Miami and Texas A&M. This will be the 89th meeting all time between Purdue and Notre Dame, with Purdue winning 26, Notre Dame winning 58, and there also being two ties in there as well. Notre Dame is currently on a 7-game winning streak against Purdue, which has to end eventually. And this is a battle for the Shillelagh Trophy. So this is not only a key game for both teams to bounce back, it is also an in-state rivalry with the trophy. For the Boilermakers after week 3, I think one of the main things they need to focus on is finishing drives. They moved the ball up and down the field pretty well, especially passing with Ryan Brown. But once they got into the red zone or close to it, finishing off those drives with touchdowns was their biggest challenge. They kicked a field goal. They had 3 turnovers around the 20. So it was ultimately a kind of a struggling day to finish drives offensively last week against USC. And I don't think they've been all that great at it before. They've really kind of relied on Maccabee and the Wildcat, which proved effective, but they haven't shown us a whole lot of ways they can score in the red zone, especially against teams with bigger D lines and better linebackers and things like that. Now, part of the reason why we had those 3 turnovers, I think, is because Ryan Brown was not super protected. He was pressured 21 times out of his 47 dropbacks in week 3. So nearly half the time he dropped back to pass, he was immediately getting pressured. And you could tell that in the way he was playing. There weren't a lot of times he was able to set back and drop back and pass. When he did, he made really good plays and had some great throws. Now, I also think against a lot of teams, if you are asking Ryan Brown to throw the ball 40 plus times or drop back 40 plus times, that is not going to be our best recipe for success. We need to get more touches for Devin Maccabee, whether that's in swing passes or whether that's actually just running the ball. Last week he had 12, and that's not nearly enough. He made some good plays in those 12, but overall, I think if our leading rusher is having 12 attempts for the game, that's probably not a great sign for where we're at, because we're probably trailing, trying to come back. But I think sticking to the running game a little more helps take some of that pressure off Ryan Brown and also just helps the flow of the offense. So getting Devin Maccabee some more touches will be huge this week. But I will say, with this pass game, I'm pretty happy with the wide receivers. They're one of the biggest areas of concern going into the season. They really didn't have much returning production from anybody. And even with the injury to Denallen Morissette, who was expected one of the top guys, Armand Branch and Nitro Tuggle have been really solid. I think Tuggle has gotten better every game, and he scored a touchdown in back-to-back games the last 2. Armand Branch has kind of been Ryan Brown's go-to target as well. George Burren, coming back from injury, has really started to catch on as well. So I think the receiving targets for Purdue and Ryan Brown are getting better every game. A lot of them are young. A lot of them have a lot of potential. And so I think that's an area that will continue to emerge and get better as the season goes on. But you got to protect the quarterback, and you still need to run the ball. Now, on defense, we still have not forced a turnover. Last week, Jaden Mayava did not throw any touchdowns, but he also didn't throw any picks. And there are probably 3 chances Purdue had to get the ball back. Manny Powell had an interception go right through his hands. Miles Slusher had 2 chances where he got his hands on the ball on one, and another one he slipped. And if he didn't slip, he had a chance to get there for another pick. So I think they just need to finish plays on the defensive side too, whether that's getting pressure on the quarterback and not sacking him, or being able to finish plays like catch the interception and make a big difference and save the Purdue defense some points. Also, 4th down last week, USC in the second half, really, whenever they got to 3rd and short, they did not care if it was less than 5, they just went for it. And so clearing up some of that short yardage stuff, whether that's swing passes or covering the outside, I think is big for them as well. So lots of things to work on both sides of the ball, but also a lot of promising things on both sides of the ball for Purdue. Now, for Notre Dame, through their 2 games, it's been a little bit of a rocky start. They are off to an 0-2 start for the first time since 1988. So not the thing you want to hear if you're a Notre Dame fan. However, it has been against some pretty top-tier competition. Miami, who they lost their first game to at this point, is number 4 in the nation and looks really strong, as well as Texas A&M, who after beating them is up to number 10 in the nation. So they have lost both games, but they've both been competitive, and they're both against really good opponents with a lot of talent on their rosters. Now, for Notre Dame, I think, and you're looking at just like scouting them out and what their strengths are, they have awesome running backs, obviously headlined by Jeremiah Love, who beginning of this year I thought would be more of a Heisman level contender. However, just his usage, I think, so far has not necessarily warranted that. But last game, he got a lot more touches than he had ever. so far this season, and he had 150 total yards of offense, had 2 touchdowns, so he started to come on. And with both of those running backs they have there, if Notre Dame gets the ball rolling in that way, they can take over a game really easily. At quarterback, redshirt freshman CJ Carr is in there, and he has been pretty good. 62.5% completions, around 500 yards at this point through 2 games. He has thrown a pick in each game, but overall he's really managed the offense pretty well, done what he needs to, and I think for a guy who's starting his first 2 games of his career, has looked pretty solid. He has great arm talent. He's a good quarterback, just young, getting used to the system, and needs a little bit more experience overall, and also needs some more help from the Notre Dame team around him. Now, on defense, Notre Dame's defense was really good last year. This year, with their new DC, they've kind of seemed to take a step back. They've allowed a lot of explosive plays so far this season, and they're just kind of playing a little bit differently. Online, when you read fans talking about it, they feel like they're playing more reactionary instead of just aggressive, and that's sort of causing some of these things. And so fans and Marcus Freeman himself aren't super happy with new DC Chris Ash, despite the fact that he's a pretty well-touted guy who's been around a lot and coached some good defenses. For some reason, fans just think it's not gelling. And Marcus Freeman this week said that he was going to step in a little bit more and be more involved in the managing of the defense and coaching the defense, which if you're a Purdue fan, you should know Freeman was the linebackers coach at Purdue a long time ago. Before then, he was the DC at Notre Dame and is now the head coach, right? So he's a guy with a lot of defensive expertise and is a really high quality DC. So that should also probably help Notre Dame get things back on track there. Purdue is currently a 27.5 point underdog against Notre Dame. So if they want a chance to pull off this upset, I have 3 keys to victory they need to make sure happen. First one is going to be winning the turnover battle. This goes both for the offense, not turning it over like they did 3 times last week. That cost them at least 9 points from field goals and also led to a pick 6 for the other team, which was a 16-point margin, which is how much they lost by. So making sure that they don't turn the ball over is going to be huge. Also on defense, forcing a turnover too and helping their offense out would also go a long way to helping them sort of be able to spark an upset in some kind of way. Now, interceptions, things like that are really easy to put all on the quarterback, but I do think the offense needs to do a better job of protecting Ryan Brown and putting him in situations where he's going to be successful. Now, part of that is the offensive line protecting. We saw a couple sacks on Saturday where it was just because the running backs even identified the open blitzer and tried to block them, but didn't do it successfully right. So making sure that we are not letting guys just come unchecked at the quarterback, making sure that Ryan Brown is put in situations to be successful, like rolling out the pocket, making sure you don't have screens, things like that to keep pressure off him, is also going to be huge. Purdue's O-line is okay, but they're not good enough to give him time to have these long developing pass plays all the time. So protect him both in your play calling and as an offensive line / running backs and that kind of stuff. Lastly, Purdue needs to force Notre Dame to pass. CJ Carr, I think, is a good young quarterback. This is not a knock on him, but if Jeremiah Love gets rolling, things can get out of hand really quick, right? Then Notre Dame can control the pace of the game. If they can just run all over Purdue, it's going to be lights out. So ultimately, they need to force CJ Carr to pass, and then hopefully they can pressure him, and he might make some mistakes as he is still a young guy in need of a little bit more experience, as you've seen with the pick he's thrown each of the last 2 games from Notre Dame. Score predictions for a rivalry game are always going to be a tricky thing. Notre Dame has won a bunch recently with 7 in a row, but at some point they are due to break that streak. And unfortunately for Purdue, I don't think that's this year, despite how much I want it to be. I think Notre Dame is going to come in angry after their 2 losses in a row. I think Purdue is not on that same talent level as a team like Miami or Texas A&M. And so it's going to be just a different level of competition, but Notre Dame's already going to be pretty sharp having played some really good teams already. Purdue, I also think is going to be angry. I think they've learned a lot after each game and gotten better, and they play really hard. But ultimately, I don't think this is the year they pull off that upset. They're just still kind of gelling together and learning how to play together and learning how to win. I just don't think Notre Dame's an opponent they can just pull off that upset on yet. That being said, I do think this game's going to be lower scoring than most think, and I think it's going to be a little bit closer than most think. The spread is 27.5, and I think Purdue is going to get way closer to that. My score prediction is Purdue 17, Notre Dame 24. And now I know that that's real low scoring and really close. However, I think the defense is going to be the story of this game. Both teams are going to want to run the ball. I think Purdue has not faced a defense at the level of Notre Dame, so they're going to play pretty conservative. I think Notre Dame, on the same way, is going to be pretty conservative. Purdue's actually been really good against the pass this year. You know, Jaden Mayava was the leading Big Ten passer in yards and touchdowns, and he was near the top of those categories nationally as well. He came out of last game with less than 300 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, had a pretty pedestrian game overall. And so I think if Purdue can play that same kind of pass defense and be disciplined, they can really just slow down Notre Dame and force them to have long drives, you know, really make them earn it and take a while to score. And I think Purdue will probably do the same thing with a lot of dink and dunk RPO kind of stuff that has been working for them so far. So I think it'll be a slower paced game. I think Purdue will get down the end zone a couple times, but not quite enough to truly threaten and win. But it should be a pretty good competitive game.